Welcome to the Backyard Horse Enthusiast, where we explore the heart, science, and soul of horsemanship. Today's guest is someone who needs little introduction in the horse world, but her story is so powerful it needs and deserves to be told. Stacy Westfall of Westfall Horsemanship is a name synonymous with trust, connection, and the kind of quiet brilliance that forever changed the landscape of modern riding. She captured the world's attention with her bridleless freestyle reining performance, a breathtaking ride that not only showcased impeccable horsemanship, but also deep emotional connection between horse and rider. She became the first woman to win the Road to the Horse competition, has been inducted into the National Cowgirl Hall of Fame, and continues to inspire riders of all disciplines through her clinics, podcast, and online training programs. But what makes Stacy's journey so special isn't just the accolades. It's her dedication to teaching the why behind the how. Her work empowers riders to move past frustration and into confidence by understanding how horses think, learn, and respond. Whether you're training in reining, trail, or just trying to build a better partnership with your horse, Stacy brings clarity, compassion, and proven methods to every lesson. In today's episode, we'll talk about the story behind her viral ride, her approach to rider mindset, the evolution of her teaching style, and how she's continuing to help people and horses connect more deeply than ever before. This is one you're going to want to watch all the way through, so settle in for a powerful conversation with one of the most respected voices in horsemanship. If you're loving this content, a quick like and subscribe will really help the channel. Doesn't cost you anything, and it means the world to me.
Awesome.
Thanks for being here. Hey, Stacy, welcome to the Backyard Horse Enthusiast. I am so honored to have you as a guest today and to share your wisdom with other equestrians and maybe people who are just curious about your journey.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Ah, thrilled. We're going to dive right in. We are going to start with your journey, and it's been an incredible one. I'd like to know, and I'm sure our viewers would too, what first sparked your passion for horses? And how did you evolve into the trainer, speaker, and coach that you are today?
Okay. It's funny. I turned 50 in September. This question is getting harder and harder the older I am. So we'll do some highlight reel versions of it. What
Okay.
sparked my interest? I remember being 5 or 6 years old. My mom loved horses, didn't have horses, and she would read the C.W. Anderson books to me. And she, would read all kinds of different horse things. And so I grew up on a steady diet of either the more realistic, because he was writing about man of war and these different horses like that. And then obviously a heavy dose of the Black Stallion and that kind of view of horses. And my mom didn't have a horse and we didn't have horses, but every time we went places, we would pet the horses and see the horses. And I got my first pony when I was 6, and it was a penny pony, which meant that my mom had grown up and the next door neighbor had a pony she learned to ride on. And this pony got passed around. Now we could call it a lease, but you would buy her for a penny, and she came with a saddle and a bridle. And as long as you could use her and take care of her, you kept her. But as soon as you couldn't, you would send her back. So essentially, for a penny, they had leased her out to all these different places. But when she came to our place, we paid 2 pennies because my brother and I both could not, we both wanted to pay. And so we paid 2 pennies for her, and she stayed there for the rest of her life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. How old do you think she was by the time she got to you guys?
She was in her 20s, and
Yeah.
and she passed away in her 30s. Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Oh
Yep. She
my
was
gosh.
amazing. She was amazing.
I'm sure.
So that's
I'm
obviously the
sure.
very early beginning. If we want to really jump forward, then I end up in a math class as a junior in high school. And he had like an extra 15 minutes at the end of math class. And he started going around, what are you going to do when you graduate? What are you going to do when you graduate? And he goes all the way around the room and he gets to me. I'm kind of over in the last line for the side that he started on. And he said, and he asked me the question. I go, I don't know. I guess I'll go to school for accounting or something. And he said, well, why do you say that? And I said, because all I want to do is ride horses, and you can't go to school for that, with a good, like, sarcastic teenage eye roll. And this is pre-internet. Sorry, we're all dating me. But he said, right, get up right now and go upstairs to the guidance counselor's office and look through those books and see if you can't find a college that has an equestrian program. And I was like, okay. So I went up and it turns out you can go to school for that. And so I ended up going to the University of Findlay in Ohio and graduated with a 4-year degree in equine studies and equine business management. And essentially, what I really graduated with was I grew up in Maine, very far, very east in the United States, not a big horse industry, especially back then. Back then, I thought the only two things you could really do with horses for a profession were the Olympics and the Kentucky Derby.
Uh,
And so what coming to Ohio and going to college did was essentially open my eyes to how big the horse industry is. Because here in Ohio is where the Quarter Horse Congress takes place. It's where there's a lot of big events like the Reining Horse Association, NRHA, started here in Ohio. Ohio is actually steeped in a lot of horse stuff, and so it was really my introduction into the entire world of horses and the horse industry. Then to just
um,
keep jumping through, I end up getting married, and my husband was a reining horse trainer, and I started training. I wanted to have the kids young because um, my mom had had us young, and I wanted them young because I also knew that I contain the grains of becoming rather driven. And I thought, if I don't have them now, I don't, once I get this ball rolling, I'm not sure whether I'll stop or not, because that's just self-awareness right there. And
right.
so had the kids real early. And then, yeah, pretty much if you look at my path after that, it pretty much took off like a freight train. So yeah.
Sheesh. Imagine if that teacher didn't go around the classroom and ask and guide you to go to the guidance counselor's office and look through those. I mean,
He
seriously.
his picture is on my website as a turning point in my life. I went back and found like the little, the little image of that, because I'm not kidding you, life changing. And that is the thing that amazes me is, literally, think he took an extra 15 minutes to influence all of us. He took what, 2 minutes of time and changed my life.
The
People
trajectory of your,
people watching this have that power. This was not a complex thing that he said. He heard
yes.
my false thinking. He pointed it out, and he didn't even know the answer, but he pointed me in the direction. That is a
Mm,
power we all have, and that is amazing.
absolutely. Oh, I'm so glad you shared that with us. Absolutely. I'm an equine gestalt practitioner and I work with empowering other
Mm.
humans and these are things that so it sounds so simple, but yet that simple act changed the trajectory of your life. Imagine how different your life. We probably wouldn't be sitting right here right now, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. I think if you like that kind of turning point moment like that, it's like I can go through, and I wonder sometimes if it's partly the person who's willing to deliver it, like the teacher, and it's partly the person who's willing to follow through, which was me.
Right.
And because I remember the first time I tried bridleless riding, I could do it at home. I could do it. I even went to the shows where we do what we call paid warm-ups, where you pay to go in and pretend you're showing so that we can find out what the horse. I did that bridleless before I ever showed bridleless because I wanted to know if the horse was going to change bridleless in the show before I did it. So I
Mhm.
did that. So I'd really checked all the boxes. And the first time I showed bridleless, I was such a nervous wreck. I literally didn't eat all day. My mom was like, "This is not good. You can't function." I could barely sip water. I was so nervous. So go lo and behold, I end up going in and I miscue her. I did 2 large fast circles, small slow circles, stopped. I meant to stand there and then do my spins. I was so tense and locked up in my body that when I stopped, she read that because that's very close to like I would hold that tension and then cue her for a rollback. And because I was accidentally holding tension, she was like, this must be the rollback. And she went. And then technically in freestyle, I could have like made up for it, but I never could mentally recover because I mean, that's the reason I was in the problem. So I get done and I've done this thing that was amazing, but I left out a lead change. I had to do one lead change right to left and one left to right. And I didn't do the one because the pattern in my head would have been the spins and then something else. So I go home and I'm just beating myself up. And I'm literally back in the day, I'm laying on the carpeted bedroom floor, rewinding the video on the VCR
Oh
and
dear.
playing it. And I'm just literally wishing I could change the past. And I'm just being so viscerally mad at myself and so hurt. And I did this is bad confession time. I did this for like 3 weeks where I kept doing this as like a thing. And one day my husband's like stepping over me on the way around over into the bathroom. And he says, have you ever considered going to the NRHA and showing at the NRHA for charity in their freestyle? And I looked at him like he'd lost his mind. But it was another one of those moments where that one question, and thankfully he like left soon, so I couldn't do any like anything else. He left, but that is what opened the door to my first actual real success because I called them and they said, yes, for sure you're invited and come on down. And that was my first major win. And I think people forget it's not all that uncommon to have like a bottom of the barrel moment. And then it's kind of how you come out of it. And a lot of times it is maybe another person offers you this rope, but you still have to be the one that takes it and
Yeah,
climbs.
grabs it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And you are that person. And if I can emphasize this to our viewers, okay? It's up to you to take that next step. You
Mhm.
when you're terrified to do it, it's just to act on it, act through it, just because you don't know. And I've shared that with people in the past. I was a signed artist. I was in a band, I was signed to a label, and I had some of the biggest endorsements, but I wanted the biggest, the biggest. And I was told no so often, so often. But I just didn't see that word as stop. That didn't mean stop to me. That meant, well, I better get a little more creative.
Yes.
Right? And
Yeah.
that's what you do. And you just say, why not? You know, your husband steps over you, says one sentence to you, keeps on walking,
Smart
and
man.
you go, oh, oh yeah, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And then boom, yet again, your life changes.
Yeah. And I think sometimes when you're it's like, I, I think when people are the reason in that level of pain that you're just like, you're
Mm.
literally watching yourself make the mistake over and over again, just being like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I made that mistake. If you actually take yourself to one of those moments, because everybody has them, if you've made it past, I don't know, 5th grade, like you're going to have had a moment like that. It's hard to remember like that level of pain. You can come out of it, but I don't think it's worth. I think you're wise to admit that that can be part of the process. It's not always part of the process, but don't avoid the pain and take it. Same thing you said about no. No doesn't mean stop. Pain doesn't mean that it's gone horribly wrong. It means that in this moment, I'm rating myself as a total failure, which is why it feels so terrible. And I'm beating myself up in this moment, which is why it feels so terrible. But that pain was actually pointing towards how much I really had wanted to do, what I knew I could do in those other rides. I knew I could do it. I had done paid warm-ups. I knew I could. And it just, but then you have to expose yourself to pain by go try again. So you really have to get this developed sense of the natural pain that comes from not having something pan out and then suffering, which is me laying on the floor re-watching and criticizing. Like, and when you start doing that, it's like, pain is feedback. You touch a stove, pain is feedback. Don't do that again. But not all feedback is like when it's painful. It's like that was just, to me, the feedback actually, because the turnaround time was October was the total flop, and December, the beginning of December was the big win. And the only thing that shifted between there was nothing technique wise, nothing whatever. It was all mindset, and it was me releasing all the outcomes and just being like, I just want to do what I know I did in the paid warm up. I just want to do what I know I could do in the paid warm up. I just want to do what I know I could do that I did in the paid warm up. And that was just, that is just, that's a success. Has nothing to do with how they place me, how they judge me, or what anybody else thinks. That is the goalpost. And it turns out if you pick something you can control like that, stuff can happen.
Sure. Absolutely. It's like being a singer in front of 10,000 people and you say, I just want to sing like I was singing in the studio with just my band members and an engineer, and it versus 10,000 people,
Yeah.
right? And that's what you do.
Mhm.
And and then the nerves just seem to subside and then you're in it and you're flowing and it's such a beautiful feeling. It becomes an addiction, so to speak, that flow. It's like, oh, I was so in that moment. It was, you were at one with your horse and
Mhm.
doing what like ballet, really. It was
Yeah.
just, oh my gosh, just so stunning. Just the connection you have to pull off something like that. Oh my gosh.
Well, thank you.
Oh my gosh. Well, let me look at my notes, Stacy, because I'm older than you and I need notes.
I have notes too. I have notes too.
Now we're going to get to the why behind the training because you emphasize understanding the why behind horse training. Can you share an example of a common training roadblock where riders often miss the why and how shifting their mindset can change everything?
Yeah, so a lot of times one thing that I like to teach that has helped me a lot in trying to verbalize essentially like a nonverbal communication between horse and rider. So you take something nonverbal, I'm out there in flow with my horse and I've got all my experience and now my job is to try to convey it to you in a way that I'm going to have to put language on it. So
Mm,
there becomes our first level of challenge, which is also fascinating to me because a lot of times you'll find trainers who learn by working for trainers because you can be passed from horse to horse. So if I train a horse and the horse knows it really well and you get on the horse, you can feel that
mm,
conversation physically, you can feel that flow and then you can recreate it. So that is like a old traditional way of kind of passing that knowledge if you want, but it's like passing feel. But a lot of us don't have that opportunity. And so the way that I started breaking it down, which gets I will come back to your why, is I started making this four square model and I was like, okay, picture a plus sign, rider's mind, rider's body, horse's mind, horse's body. First thing you're going to do, you're going to break your problem into that. So let's say I'm leading my young horse that I just bought and I go to lead her into a stall. So we're walking along, and then she hits the brakes and stops. And I turn around to look at her. Well, right now we've got my mind and her mind. We've got my body and her body. And so she stops, and we're going to just say for the sake of argument, I didn't do anything to cause it. And she stops, and so she's pulling a little tension on that rope because she's like, "Yeah, I don't think so. I'm new here, but I like outside with all my buddies, and I know we're going in here, and you're going to tie me up, and I'd rather not go to school today, so I think I'll just stand outside and see what you're going to do about it." So, but the way that it goes down is she's having a thought about it. I find it humorous at this point because I'm pulling from an actual example, and I had bought this young horse and I was teaching her to tie, and I had been tying her up, and I could go through the whole process, but just to shorten it, we would do a work session. I would take her in and tie her, and she led in and out perfectly fine until she started to see the system, and then she was like, "Yeah, I'm thinking maybe we don't go in there," and I was like, Understandable. Do you see even now? I'm like, I'm understanding what she's seeing. So it's my mindset that's reading her. But let's just go back to pure physical. So we're walking along and there's slack in the rope and she's just there. And then she stops and there's this tension because that's what it looks like when, when a horse stops. They technically put the tension on me. And so they put the tension. So I turn around, but because I have my own training philosophy, I turn around still holding that light amount of pressure. And let's just give it a number. Let's call it a couple of pounds, which it just depends. It's like a pound or two. I mean, water weighs something. This is not weightless. So when I use numbers, it's just because there is an actual feel in that lead rope. So it's like she stopped me at 2 pounds. And so I turn around and I'm holding 2 pounds because I'm also the trainer. I'm receiving information. So she's standing there and she's likely thinking the last 6 days in a row, you've tied me up in there for 15 minutes and I kind of don't want to do it. And I'm holding the pressure because that's me having a conversation with her. That's me saying to her, I hear you, and I'm waiting until you take a step forward to give you a release. Because you basically, your body stopping was like a question. Do I have to go in there? My answer is you don't have to go in there, but you do have to hold this pressure. And so this is how this dance of like the why she stopped and then the what I'm going to do, these are all layers that are inside of this very simple leading a horse into a stall or a horse trailer or whatever it is, and they stop.
Mm. Mm-hmm. It's a constant dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Now we'll jump into developing clear communication with horses, which we're already touching on. You teach riders how to develop clear, confident communication with their horses. What are the biggest mistakes that you see riders making in their communication, and how can they fix those?
Mm, yeah, let's kind of continue a little bit with that example.
Mm.
So the mistake
Mm-hmm.
becomes I see a lot of very empathetic riders who turn around and say, "Oh no, what did I do wrong?" Like they take the responsibility, even though, I've trained hundreds, if not thousands of horses at this point. And it's just as common for a young child to say, "Do I need to go to school today?" Like, really? Like that's not a problem. If we see kids that are questioning going to a classroom, we don't think something's gone drastically wrong here. But a lot of times, if we see a horse questioning something very similar, like I always say, tying them up is like having a student sit in a chair. At some point between elementary school and college, you learn how to sit for an hour at a time with focused thinking. And this horse is like, yeah, kind of, maybe no. And it's that self judgment layer of like, oh no, did I do something wrong? Well, that person releases the rope, walks back, pets the horse because maybe they're afraid that the horse, was having a bad experience. And the horse is like, okay, so deal. If I don't want to go, I stop, and then the human comes back to me. And it's if you drop the layers of judgment against, because the other one is like, what's wrong with this horse? It already walked in the stall 6 times in a row. I'm going to jerk on the rope because obviously it needs to learn a lesson. Like so much of this is story driven by the way that you view it, view the interaction. So my thought is when you run into a challenge with your horse, in the moment, it's just like having a challenge with a child because whether you have children or not, you were a child at one point in your life. And so you have the memory of being a child. So it's like when you're negotiating with children or even other people, a lot of times in the moment, you're swept into your normal way of default way of thinking, where
Mm.
sometimes it helps to stop and you might not do, maybe you did respond by stopping, walking back, and petting the horse. Making some mistakes is okay. It's the consistent problem of doing that consistently that starts to become a problem. You don't have to be a perfect parent to parent, but you do at some point have to be like, the last 12 times the kid did this, I did this, and it seems to be snowballing in a bad direction. So
Mm-hmm.
the mistake is not reviewing that and not trying to see it from multiple angles.
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's like the parent that keeps saying, "If you don't, I'm going to. If you don't, I'm going to. If you don't stop, I'm going to. If you don't," and you're like, "Do it already."
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
very much.
Oh.
Very, very true.
And then we have the riders that are struggling with confidence issues,
Mhm.
whether it's fear of failure, a bad experience, we've all had them, or self doubt. What advice do you have for those riders who feel mentally stuck with their
Mhm.
horse?
Yeah, yeah. It is such a real experience because typically I think people who get involved with horses are empathetic and they love the horse. So we start with a person who wants to do the best for the horse, which is a beautiful thing, but it also means that a lot of times they can have a lot of fear around doing the wrong thing. And so this a lot of times when you have that stuck feeling, so let's grab and put it, I always work best if I have an example. So you have somebody who says, I had a horse when I was younger and then I sold it and I raised a family and then I got back into horses and I bought a horse and everything was lovely and then one day I was riding and it spooked and I fell off. And I'm scared and I don't know what to do. So whether you resonate with the story or not, start with the part where you feel
Hmm.
scared or where you feel stuck. So you get to that moment where you feel scared or you feel stuck. Well, usually you know that because you've gone to the barn 6 times and realized that you don't really want to mount up, or you go to the barn and you start feeling sick, or you can't even go to the barn, or there's some kind of cycle that's giving you the idea that you feel stuck, like you'll only ride when your instructor is standing there, you'll only ride if the wind isn't blowing, you'll only ride, there's the whole list of things, and what people do is they lump it into one big thing. I'm afraid. And they don't do what I literally was just doing there. They don't go and say, oh, when the wind's blowing I'm not okay, but when it seems quiet I am willing to go and stand in the barn and brush, but I'm not willing to mount. I am willing to mount, but I'm not willing to canter, but I am willing to walk and trot. They don't start piecing apart where they are willing to do and what they're not. And so they don't find their way forward.
Mm.
Because inside of like that four square model, we've got there most interesting dance between horse and rider is that it's ultimately like you can say there is a physical and a physical happening. It's got a very physicalness to it. We don't just, I can go to a coffee shop and sit and talk with a friend and we can never touch, but we can communicate. Horses have much more of this physical dance language going on between us, even in the lead rope example. And so we can start to say, well, when you fell off, like what was going on? Or even better, like, do you know how you would stop it if it was going to happen again? If you were in that same exact situation right now, we're sitting on the couch or we're having coffee. If you don't know the answer to how you would stop it, you might have a rightful fear.
Right.
And because you're like, I didn't know where the emergency brake was. You know what I mean? Like, so we now we go like, well, that's very solvable. I find a lot of people are judging themselves for that fear without actually looking at whether or not they have the skill set to solve the challenge. And a
Mm.
lot of times when you're building the skill set, one of my favorite things to do with people is like I'm thinking of a current student who was saying, the horse is fine, but when I go to start jumping, the horse gets really bold and strong and just rips the reins from my hand. And then I watch a video and I have them doing an exercise at a walk, and I see what I would call a 1% version of that. But if you don't perceive at the walk, if you don't perceive that motion from the horse as a 1% and you leave it alone there, well, when everything goes to the high level of speed, and rightfully so, there's a positive tension. When you are an athlete, you're not relaxed like you're sitting on the couch. When you're in a high athletic state, there's what I call positive tension. Well, that comes with like a readiness in your brain. Well, the horse is doing that. And if you got a 1% problem, this is like driving your car with a slightly flat tire at 10 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour. It makes a difference.
Sure. Yep. I'm like
Technical.
listening to this and relating.
Yeah, it's really that technical skills and the mental awareness, and really keep going back to those two things, because you should be afraid to drive the car that has the flattish tire, but people, you'll make an exception and maybe creep your way to the grocery store, but maybe you don't go on that really long trip on the highway that requires you to drive fast. And I think that's where people, they're not doing that level of separating when they're looking at their horse.
Sure. Break it down, back it up,
Yeah.
take it down to first gear, fix it there.
Yes.
You don't
Yes.
want to try to fix it when you're, in cruising speed.
Yeah, and a lot of times they can't see it at the 1%. And
Yeah.
that's where getting some external eyes looking at you
Eyes on
helps,
it.
because you can't see it at that lower percent. And that's okay, but it's also why you have the problem in the bigger realm.
Right. Absolutely. You often talk about how horses teach us more than just riding skills. What's the biggest life lesson you've learned from working with horses and how it shaped you as a person?
Okay. So it, it really comes down to, there is this how you do one thing, you do everything kind of an idea going on here. So, like, there's going to be a mindset that you approach problem solving with. There's going to be a way that you show up. And now I'll give you this for sure. I'm not saying that you're always like, so me, I would definitely put myself in a shy introverted category as my default. But a lot of times when people think about introvert, you have to read the book The Power of Introvert, The Power of Quiet, I think is what it's called. It's like, anyway, it's something like that. I'm butchering the name, but it's this idea that introvert means I recharge in quiet spaces. So I can
Mm.
recharge on a trail. It doesn't mean I don't like people. It doesn't mean that I don't love teaching and interacting. It just means that I recharge on the trail ride
Right.
alone with my horse, because for some reason they get a pass. Like, they are a recharge. So, having been in that category, there are times in my life where I look like I do the horses big and bold, but maybe I do something else, like, like I'm a little bit more scared to stand up in public speak, or in, I don't know, a PTA meeting or something.
Hmm.
So, to me, that actually, the difference there is like there's more of like an area of expertise thing that's happening there. But let's go back to your question, and like back to like lessons from horses. There will be a lot of similarities. So here's the example I go to. I become a mom. I have three boys. They get to the ages of, let's say, they're all single digits, but they're kind of pushing on that. So maybe I have a 9, a 7, and a 5 year old, because that's how my boys are staggered depending on the time of year. I've got them in a back-to-back year with a gap, or I've got them evenly sped like that. They happen to be right now, they're 27, 25, 23. And then one will have a birthday, and then they'll move back and forth. And so here I am, a young mom, and I've got these three kids, and they keep squabbling and fighting, and I keep trying to solve it. Well, my horse training brain, they're squabbling and they're fighting, and it's really about like little petty things, and I don't know what to do, but I do know horses, so I'm like, okay, come here. Oh, he did this and he did that and he did this, and I say, okay, here's the deal. Everybody's going to go out and run down to the mailbox and run back. And they're little, but the mailbox, we're talking like they're going to run like, I don't know, it was going to run 800 feet. They're going to run down to the mailbox and they're going to run back. And I look at them and I go, run down and back one more time. And then now they look a little more like I could negotiate with them. I've done two things. I have taken a little bit of the energy out of them, but I've also bought myself a few minutes to try to think of how I'm going to solve this problem. Full confession,
I
this is
love
exactly what
it.
I'm doing. But this is exactly what I would do with the young sassy horse that's like swirling its head and it's got all this energy. You know what you don't do right then is detailed work. It needs to move its feet. And so the kids come back and I do this, and I'm literally just using what I already know, because my area of expertise is horses. I'm using that, and then we negotiate and we do this. And I literally think this is just how it's going to go. 6 months later, I can hear them begin to kind of squabble and escalate. I could hear one of them, because we had a finished basement, so I could be in the kitchen and I could hear them it's coming from the basement, and they'd be like, shh, don't let mom hear. Okay, how we're going to do this. And they would work it out between themselves because it wasn't exactly punishment to run down to the mailbox and back, but it was enough work that it motivated the whole team to unite themselves to not have to do that. So I did not see that coming, by the way. I wish I could take the credit for that. But what I do know is that same approach works with horses, that when they're feeling all sassy and fresh, you take the edge off. It's not saying you run them into the ground. It's just like the kids. But this goes back to life lessons. There is going to be this similarity, whether you're as clear as I am describing it here or not. You can start to see how you have approaches, especially from your area of expertise, that may be able to really serve you in another area of life. And that's how you can really get amazing forward motion when you take your strength in one area, distill the lessons from that, and then start applying it in a new area where I
Sure.
could probably get myself to be a stronger public speaker if I wanted to take the time to distill the lessons I've learned over here and transfer them over there.
Sure. I love it. And I can totally relate because I would often share that with friends and family about, having my daughters and raising them. And I'm like, I kind of do it all the same, whether I have kids, a dog, horses. It's it's kind of the same stuff. We have
Yeah.
our boundaries. I keep them safe in those boundaries. There are consequences if already know what they are, and I'm consistent with
Yep.
them and I follow through. And so we all have a great understanding.
Yeah.
And that's why it works.
Yeah.
And they're
Exactly.
like, what do you mean? Your kids like your horses, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
kind of. It doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yes. I totally agree. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Now we'll discuss adapting to different horses and training challenges.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because as we know, every horse is different. Some
Mhm.
are naturally willing, others are a bit more challenging. So, how do you approach training when a horse just doesn't respond the way you were expecting?
Yeah.
Where do you go from
There's a
there?
couple different angles. I'll go a couple ways and then I'll let you direct me where you want more information. So for me personally, because I was this horse crazy kid that got this opportunity to go to a college and was like living my dream. And my mind is very active and I'm very creative, whether it was artistically, like painting and doing things in college. Now, literally, I look at my horses. My horses are my art. So when you see the bareback and bridleless, when you see that, to me, that's like there's this creativity and that's a piece of who I am. And so when I was younger and problems would happen, it was more like I remember reading an article. I think it was either like Horse Illustrated or Horse and Rider. It was like an article on like how to lunge your horse. And so I go out there and I'm going to be this student. I'm going to lunge my horse. And I'd had the horse for a few years and I'm probably, I don't know, 14, 15 years old. I go to lunge the horse and I send it around and I send it out and it goes out and it comes back and it like comes to me and I step out of the way because I don't know what I'm doing. And we do this about 3 or 4 times and I'm like, I feel like a bullfighter. I think I'll just get on and go ride. And so there's a lot of times when you don't know what you don't know and like I have just gobs of stories that are just train wrecks because I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the technical skills. I mean, literally, looking back, I can still run the movie in my mind. And I'm thinking, I sent her away and she goes out and she hits the end of the line and she goes a little bit and then she just literally comes back to me because why wouldn't you? And I don't have a solution for it. And I just was like, no, this feels like I'm training a bullfighter. I don't, this isn't working. And so you can be in that situation, but because for me personally, so let me say this. So I empathize with anybody who's in that situation because sometimes you need more than the article. I reread the article. It didn't really explain to the level of where I was starting from. And so I think that can be a legitimate problem for me personally because I love um creative thinking. It did not take very long for me to fall in love with colt starting and problem horses. And they were by far and still to this day are some of my favorites because they're what I would call outliers. So what happens when you do something for a long time and you do it a lot, I'm guessing you did this with your music too, like you learn a base set of skills to do something and that is hard and valuable work and super amazing. And then at some point, you can do that really well, and then creativity gets to come in. And for me, the horses that are the outliers, they call upon me, and I'm like, oh, you're not going to think like 60 to 80% of horses. You're going to offer me some of these 20% things, and you're going to offer me some of those 1% things. And so, but because my brain thinks like that, I'm still approaching them in that way, and I'm able to start kind of clustering them. And here's the other thing I end up doing. I end up going, well, the 70% of horses take this long to do this. You're taking 4 times longer. Therefore, I'm going to apply that, and I'm going to start thinking you're going to do everything 4 times longer, or I'm analyzing their thinking process. So even the outliers, they just give me a new problem set to do. But that I'm not claiming, if you don't have that much experience, you might not experience that. So now you got to tell me the musical translation for that.
Um, let's see. Something that comes to mind for me was and I'm not sure this correlates completely. I'm of the mindset when I'm given a new piece of music to learn, right? And the band is working something out. I'm that person who always said, let's take it out live before it's perfected.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
initially, when I started doing this, it was met with, what are you crazy? And I'm like, because you're actually, what better place to learn what exactly is working and what isn't, and polish it and get that um experience of presenting it live,
Yeah.
than to just do it. You just have to do it, and it will cure it, like a, a piece of ceramic, it will just come to life and set, and and it actually, taking it out and doing the music that way, it was tighter and better performed than in 4 weeks, say, versus doing 8 weeks in a rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
Truly,
Yeah. Yeah.
truly.
I truly believe you, because what I hear you saying there is, if I translate it to horses, people need enough of a skill set to keep themselves safe. You weren't going to die if you played the music wrong, but you can actually get injured riding horses. So you've got to have a set of skill set that will keep you safe, but trying to perfect things along the way doesn't work out quite as well as that real live conversation. So the problem horse for me, I have enough skills to keep myself safe. And then that conversation opens up all the energy flow and that
Mm.
aliveness of the conversation. But it would be very inappropriate for me to teach somebody with a life risking level of lack of skill set. But the non so people get slowed down and get so tight. And remember, this is a dance between bodies. They get so like, I don't have it right. I don't have it right. And then they don't realize that the I don't have it right, which is what you're talking about in the story, is like also constricting the very thing that makes music or dance or horsemanship alive and beautiful. You need enough to keep yourself safe, but you don't need it to be perfect.
Right, right. Exactly. And so when my brain, when my ears, when what I had experience in said, we've rehearsed it enough. This
Mm-hmm.
is enough. It has to go out live now. We have to trust that. And we're going to stumble here and there, but we're going to figure it out, and
Mm-hmm.
it'll be so polished in a much shorter amount of time.
Totally.
Yeah. And yeah, and it is learning to overstep the fear of being judged by others, that, oh my gosh, that was less than stellar. Yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of knew it going into that, but it was good enough for the first time, and it was better the second, and by the fourth it was a masterpiece.
Yes. Yes. And what riders have for the challenge is they have the challenge of what are other people going to think, which is more of a mindset challenge. And then they really truly need to only bite off as much as they can keep themselves safe with.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, a missed lead change or a bad lead departure is not something that's going to kill you. But if you're actually just like, I'm going to wing it and go on that trail ride with the drop offs and the traffic and my horse doesn't stop, yeah, don't do that. Because like it's like it's not just a mindset piece where you just put yourself out there. We're now operating a vehicle of sorts that if you lose your brakes or steering, you could end up injured. So that's where, but it's the same idea. Like you got to just measure that you have enough skills to success, meaning keep yourself safe and learn something, safety to being literally physically safe for you and the horse. And then you can, it's just like trying to perfectly parent or perfectly raise a puppy. It's just perfect is actually kind of let it be a puppy and work with it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And yeah, definitely. Gosh darn it. I mean, I have a rescue dog that when I got her, she couldn't even walk on a leash, an adult, you know. But 3 years later, with consistent training, taking it to the next level only when she was ready because had to keep her safe, had to know I could retrieve her,
Mhm.
right? Now we're out in the middle of a preserve with other dogs and hikers and whatnot. And when she hears a human ahead or a dog, her first instinct is to stop, turn around, come back to me.
Mhm.
But that
Yeah.
didn't happen overnight.
Right.
And there were scary moments. Those, the first time going off lead
Mhm.
and trusting that you've imparted enough wisdom into this animal that it knows now. That
Yeah.
was always the scariest part, but the payoff is now 3 years later that I have this beautiful dog that I can hike with, and I know she's safe and nothing's going to be out of my control
Mhm.
you know yeah, don't go down the highway with a flat tire going 65. Don't do it. No matter how much you need that milk. Stacy, throughout your career, has there been a particular moment, whether in a clinic, a competition, or even a personal experience, where something just clicked and it changed how you view training forever?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. There have been several, and I think sometimes it surprises people that none of them were show related. Some of them may have taken place around or near. Like I remember it's just a tiny one that's not the big one I can share, but like even I just remember when I was showing Roxy, I would haul to shows and it's something I never could see because I'm about to tell you why. I would show up in the morning and I'd come walking in and maybe I'd be in Oklahoma and I've got a stall and people that I didn't even know, like other trainers or people are sitting there. And after a few days, I'd come in and they'd be laughing and I'd say, "What's going on?" And they said, "We can always tell when you arrive because your horse walks up." And I would always get a tack stall next to the show stall and I would keep the hay in the tack stall. And I was lazy about how I would hay her. So I would walk into the tack stall and I'd throw it over.
Throw it over.
And sometimes the tack stalls would have would be solid walls and sometimes would be bars. But due to all of this always happening, they said, we can always tell. And notice it took a few days for them to catch on because when you arrive, and we think it might be when you get out of your vehicle and she can hear because everybody wears different spurs. And so you have a slightly different way that you walk and the sound that they make. And they said she'll stand and she'll cock her head just like a dog. She'll cock her head like this and she'll get this funny looking. And then we can set a clock by it that you're going to appear. And I thought that was so fascinating that
Oh,
that it was so visual that they could see it after being there for a while. And that always meant something to me. And I never really saw it because by the time I showed up there, she was like, "Hey," you know what I mean? Like I
literally.
never could see that moment. And so they had to share it with me. But when I think about the moment where something really clicked, the one that always, always, always just stands out in my mind is, I grew up in Maine, didn't know you could be in the industry, and then I went to the University of Findlay. So I go to Findlay and I grew up, my mom loved animals, but she was right there beside me when we were making all these mistakes with horses and like, I don't know. I mean, maybe we should just not do that again. So it wasn't like she showed me how to lunge my horse afterwards. We were more like, yeah, that's a problem. Just let's not do that. So she didn't know a lot, but she was very empathetic and good with animals. So for example, her last dog, I'm going to say, accidentally taught it like 30 or 40 different toy names because she just talks with them. So she could say, Mr. Moose, get your Kong. That's not your Kong. Go get the newspaper. And I mean, I'm not kidding you. The dog knew all of these different toys and she never trained it, but obviously she trained it. If a hornet or a wasp was there, if you're outside in the grass, he'd walk over and be sniffing and she'd say, bad bug. And he'd go, because you know that she said bad bug. And then if he got stung or bit, it didn't take that long until she'd go, bad bug. And he'd be like, okay. Because he was part Jack Russell Terrier. So he had a strong like desire to herd and do things and stuff. But darn, if my mom says bad bug, the dog's like, okay, I'm out. And so she just was consistent and there. So this is the mother I grew up with, but we didn't know anything about horses. We could keep them alive and we could stay on top. And then when I went to college, I was learning a lot of what I would call the nuts and bolts of horse training. So I learned all kinds of amazing things, how to move a hip, how to move a shoulder, how to lower a head, how to do a lead departure. I learned all these nuts and bolts of training, but I was getting this really conflicting messaging because it felt really mechanical. Like it had a very mechanical feel to like, this is the operating manual and you just do this. And I remember I openly, like on my own podcast, call it like the Disney view, but I embrace the Disney view. I'm like, I'm keeping my Disney view of horses and I'm combining it with the nuts and bolts, and that's me. And so this idea that they are, the idea that they want to interact with us and the idea that they have thoughts and feelings and experience, I'm like, I'm holding on to all of it, even if you label me the Disney view. I'm even going to make it up. So I remember this moment where I took my husband, we were engaged at the time, to Maine to meet my horses. And at that point, because I'd been in college and then I would do an internship, I hadn't been around my horse, but we had been together heavily for 5 years. She was the one that I came out of a barrel racing event and couldn't stop leaving the gate. And I even hit a car. When I say I couldn't stop, we hit a parked car. Like when I say hit it, the parked car was here and she kind of like slid to a stop with her legs under it and her neck over it and me laying on her neck. And I was like, well, that was really close. That's way more than close. But we spent a ton of time together. So even though we were kind of unsafe, we knew each other. We knew each other. So at college, I was kind of getting this message that, horses act like this, and this is like, you do this. And it just had that vibe of like, this is mechanical. And I remember literally thinking like, man, I wonder if I guess I just made up all that stuff where it felt like we had that kind of connection. I guess that was just like too many Black Stallion movies or whatever. There was this vibe going on and it felt like, because I'm a junior now and I think probably going to have to, let go of that. And we went to Maine and my mom had the horses. She had moved. And so she had them boarded. And we went to go see them. And we were in this big old bank barn in Maine. And we step out the door and the horses are way out in the field and they're in a herd. And my horses, we had 2 horses and a pony for the majority of our life. At this point, the pony had passed away and the 2 horses we had owned were out there. And they're in like a herd of 20 or something. So we start walking out and we walk, 500, 600, whatever feet we walk, and we're away from the barn. And it's like the horses are out here, the barn is down here, and we're kind of walking up here to avoid this like weird spot here. So we're walking, we're walking over here and we're walking up through there. And some horse sees us and they all stampede for the barn. So at that point, all you do is you watch them, right? Like they're going to run to the barn and then we'll go down and get them. And they're running to the barn. And my horse leaves the herd and turns and comes right straight up to me. And I promise you, I'd never taught a day of liberty in my life. This is the same horse I couldn't lunge. Nothing. And I literally just broke down crying because that moment was the moment that I decided I will never let go of the idea that we had a relationship, even though we had no technical skills to keep us safe when we hit a car. And it was such a visceral moment. What a gift she gave me through that one response. Because I knew how close I was to, like, I don't want to say I'm not even saying that they were saying you can't do that. They just it was just steeped in this like show horse, this is how you train. This is not relationship. And it's the industry has changed so much now. You hear
Mm,
a lot more about relationships. I promise you, back in 1996 when this happened, this was not a conversation we were
yeah.
having, and it changed my life. And I believe truly with all I am that that bareback bridleless ride that came up never would have happened, because that moment made me a believer for the rest of my life.
And I hear you. I can totally resonate. I'm someone whose father had a very large riding stable. Now I'm 62 years old, so imagine this is back in the 70s, right? And same. You didn't talk about that stuff. Horses were they were a machine, they're a tool, you broke horses. You didn't start them, you broke them, pretty much. Um and I took the same path, with having made those connections. And there was a part of me that as a child and a young adult that would kind of look at things that were being done and like, there's a little more to this,
Yeah,
and yeah. mm, wow. Yet again, another moment in life that changed your trajectory, right?
definitely.
My
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Oh, can we dive into your time spent with Denny Emerson and exploring different disciplines? Can we? Can we? What you got there? Oh,
My Denny
no better.
books.
I love it. I love it. And are these available on your website,
No,
Stacy?
no, these are
No.
just Denny's
Do you,
books that like he in this one like yeah, anyway, he's got a couple books, and so I've for Denny, I've been a follower from afar from Denny. So
Mhm.
when he started really posting on Facebook and running his page and stuff, I came across him and I really appreciated his explanations, especially because you know, he was what I think he was on the Olympic team in 1974, but he also rode in the Tevis Cup, and he's posting still today on, on Facebook and answering questions and giving his take over what has changed over the years, the challenges he sees. And so I became an avid follower of his through Facebook. And I live in Ohio, so I'm in Ohio right now, but I'm from Maine. And so when actually he interviewed me for the book at one point, and so I had done that as kind of a like, wow, that was really cool kind of an experience. But then not too many years ago, I was driving to Maine and I had my horses and my horse trailer, and I went up to spend a few weeks in Maine. And it's so funny because they ended up making an article out of it in the I think it was the Quarter Horse Journal, and I thought it was such a funny thing because they were interviewing me and I was just talking about it, and they ended up opening with it with the idea like Stacy Westfall was nervous about calling Denny Emerson to see if she could stop by and ride with him. And they were telling it from that third person, like, that isn't that hysterically funny. Well, from my point, it felt really scary. Like I'm gonna call, or I think I emailed and then called. They gave me the number. I'm gonna email and be like, "Hi, I don't even know if you know who I am, but I kind of want to stop at your farm and like be a fan and that kind of stuff," which is really, again, vulnerable to do. But I'd been following him and I just admired him, and it felt like a bucket list kind of a thing. And they said yes.
Good
And
for
uh,
you.
and so I stopped. So I got to go for a ride in Vermont with Denny, and I got to show them a few of my horsey things with my horse, because my horses were getting toted along. And so and then he and then yeah, it's just been kind of a fun connection with the book connection, but also that moment of I love the moments where I still allow that little girl in me to still be there, to be like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna meet an Olympic rider. I can't believe I'm gonna do that. You know what I mean? Like, I can still totally be her back in Maine who's opening up a magazine and looking for any of the free training guides that you can subscribe to that were in the back column, where now you just download something off the internet. But back in the day, you had
Yeah.
to like really, it was like, I
Oh,
just
yeah.
wanted to know it all. And I love that there's this
Oh,
piece, and I see it in my mom when I'm around her. I see her childlike love of life, which is literally what is the dog thing. Like, how is she training the dog accidentally? Because she's embracing and living that childlike wonder of talking with a dog enough that the dog knows the difference between a Kong and a newspaper and a 16 other whatever things. Like, it's amazing.
sure thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, well, I'm going to try to find links for those books and we'll put it in the description box. Also, for our viewers that are watching and you want to get more information on Stacy, there is a link in the description box to her website. So please feel free to use that. And I'm sure you'll be happy that you did. I know I was. For horse owners who may not have access to top trainers, not everyone does, but want to improve their skills, what are the top three things they can start doing today to create a better partnership with their horse?
Yeah. So I'm going to take the three and I'm going to make them into a little system.
Okay.
And so we know that horses thrive, just like you mentioned, the dogs and the kids and the general relationships across the board, if we have some kind of consistency. So if I was going to give them one thing to do that was kind of three steps, it would be at least once a week. And if you can work up to 3 times a week, great, whatever the number is, but try this. Take 15 minutes. And most of us have some version of a cell phone not too far from us at this point in our lives. And prop it up or buy a $20 tripod or elastic band it to your water bottle. I don't care. Like, make it
Fence
stand up.
post.
You could do whatever you want. Just get that thing to stand up. It's possible. I've got somebody who pays for one of my things and she still just balances it on the edge of the thing. And I'm like, it works. If the wind blows, I have to be like, hey, it fell down. Um, so, but 15 minutes. Plan a 15-minute ride that's going to keep you anywhere in front of the camera most of the time, and plan what you're going to do, because what it's going to do is if you record for 15 minutes, you've got that much space on your phone and you can delete it after you watch it. But what you're going to do is you're going to record it. You're going to ride something somewhat intentional. I don't care if you put one cone down and you ride 5 circles one direction and 5 circles the other direction and you pick the gait, or maybe you do transitions. I don't care. And then you're going to be done. And that's literally, you already had a major win. Now your second win is going to come when you watch the video.
That's
And when you, it is hard. And when you watch the video, you're just going to notice that when you hit play, or when you won't hit play, that you won't hit play. We'll start with that one. And then you go, what? You know, my win for the week this week was I recorded it and I'm just deleting it. But I hope you eventually get past that to the point where you're like, I'm going to watch it. And the first assignment, watch for one good thing. Watch for one good thing. And literally start doing a process of that, because what happens is it's very hard to get better on your own without some kind of evaluation cycle.
Mhm.
And what the cycle that will be revealed in this is, you have to plan to carry the phone and record. You have to set the phone up and record. And then you watch the video. And literally, if you did nothing else and you only did that one time a week, I guarantee you it would change your riding by the end of the year. Because you don't know, like, even me, I think people are always surprised. So if I get if I get on a horse at a clinic, I'm gonna feel a lot of what's happening, but I'm not gonna know the nuances and the detail, because when horses move a little bit different, the way it feels is slightly different. I'm gonna know the head's up, medium, or down, but I'm not gonna have the nuances to some of it in that short amount of time. It takes a feedback loop of something to build that up. And that feedback loop, oftentimes for people, is paying for instruction. But you can make a feedback loop with your phone,
Mhm.
because you'll look and you'll be like, man, I thought I was keeping my hands down because my riding instructor last year kept telling me that, but I'm not keeping my hands down when I watch that video. That's a feedback loop.
Right. And
And
now it's committed to memory too now, right? I mean, you've done something neurologically that it is now you that will improve in your next ride.
And literally, it's not only, it's what people don't understand is that you can, if you record 15 minutes, dismount, walk over, you could watch it later, but if you even watch it right then, you can feel what was happening on the video
Sure.
because you
Absolutely.
were the one doing the video and now you're watching the video and you will get to the point. If you start with a ton of shame and guilt and doubt and fear and judgment, you might block some of that feeling. But I promise you that week after week, if you're like, I'm winning if I just record 5 minutes. I'm winning if I just, because you really only have to record like 5 minutes. It's a 15-minute cycle to be able to set the camera up, record for 5 minutes, and watch for 5 minutes. You don't even have to record for 15 minutes. You just record 5 minutes into a 15-minute cycle. And, but there will drop a day and you'll be like, oh yeah, I did feel where he was pulling over there. And I do see how when I use my rein that way, I actually cause that weird head tilt that I've been trying to figure out how to get rid of it. You don't notice the details until you get past the judgment, which means you got to set it up and do it. But it is freaking amazing how it will crawl right into your brain. It will crawl into your body and your brain just by.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will tell you that back in the day when I was still showing and had a trainer, I was fortunate enough to have my training sessions. Remember the camcorders, Stacy? They were
Oh
like
yeah.
as big, like you were
Yeah.
filming a movie, for God's
Yeah.
sakes, on a set. But I would have every single one of my sessions recorded so that I could just sit and watch and watch. Why? Well, let's think about, well, for me, I'm showing, so now I've got an investment, right?
Mhm.
It's worth my time to sit and watch that and rewind it and hear what my coach is saying and watch that. Oh, she's right. Would you look at that left leg? Oh my gosh. I didn't even know and that's what I did. And then when I was in the show ring, it was the same thing. Record it, look at it,
Yeah.
and I really feel like that improved my riding in a great way, and especially it ended in results,
Yeah.
in the show ring. So, I no longer show, but trust me, I'm doing this. I'm filming myself with my horse and I have to get comfortable with I'm in editing. I've got to hear my voice. No one likes their voice
Mhm.
on a
Nope.
recording, right? Nobody wants to see themselves, but you get past that and the benefits of it. I agree with you 110% on
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
Truly. And you're right. Everybody's got a phone. Get
Yep.
some, and we got baling twine. If you don't have baling twine in your barn, you're lying.
Baling twine and duct tape, we can fix anything.
Everything. My favorite go-tos. Oh, Stacy, let's talk about what's next for Stacy Westfall.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot. You've already accomplished so much already in your life. So, what the heck is next for you? Are there any new projects, clinics, or exciting ventures on the horizon? Do tell.
My most exciting adventure is that my mare is pregnant and she's due. She's technically in her safe window starting today. She's due, it's so, horses have this big window. My guess is it's going to be in a couple weeks, but she's doing a lot of signs. And so it's very exciting for me because she is a granddaughter of Roxy, the bareback bridleless horse, which means I actually rode Roxy's mother, and then I rode Roxy, and then I rode her daughter, and then I rode this granddaughter, and now the foal that's about to be born is that next generation. And so
Oh,
that to me is just fun. Yeah.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I hope you post videos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
I'm
my
sure I will.
gosh.
Yeah, it's very exciting and it's just again, it's that excitement of I get to do this for a living. I get to do this for a living. I get to talk about horses all day. If you could go back and tell 14-year-old me who's being run over by her horse after reading an article that this is how it pans out, I would not believe you.
That's inspiring and beautiful. Stacy, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing not only your wisdom, but also your heart, which is huge. Your approach to horsemanship, grounded in clarity, compassion, and curiosity, continues to empower riders at every level. And your words today will no doubt resonate with so many of us who are walking this path with our horses. You remind us that the relationship that we build with our horses is as much about who we become as it is about what we accomplish, and that is a gift. To our viewers, if you found inspiration in this conversation, and I know you did, be sure to check out Stacy's resources, podcast, and training programs, all of which I'll have linked below. And as always, thank you for tuning in to the Backyard Horse Enthusiast. Stay curious, stay kind, and keep listening to your horse.
Hmm.
Thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be in touch. I want to hear about this new grandbaby.
I know, right?
My goodness. Very excited for you. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
If you're loving this content, a quick like and subscribe will really help the channel. Doesn't cost you anything, and it means the world to me. Thanks for being here.